Are they going to tell me when to get my flu shot? Because I usually get it in November, but I feel like I need to do it earlier this year. Not sure.
I can ask. Actually, I'm gonna actually write that down. That's a really good question because I don't know the answer.
I called my clinic and they said that they're not gonna have the vaccine available till September, but they're like you could get it as soon. And I was like, but what are you recommending? And they were like, it's your choice. And I was like, but I need to know.
I would also like for them to tell me. I would appreciate that very
Yeah.
much. I would find that
Can't make
helpful.
personal choices.
Same. I mean, but like I like to seek out informed advice as I make my personal choices,
100%.
Okay, so we're live on YouTube. I'm just gonna go ahead and get us on all the social medias and tag all the organizations involved. Just sometimes Zoom can be a little inaccessible to folks, so we always make a point of live streaming to YouTube just to make sure everybody can be part of this.
Nice. Good idea.
All right, and we are live. We just went on Twitter. Now let's go over to Facebook. Did Facebook update for you all too? It's a whole new view now for me.
Yes. I don't know if
it's the weirdest thing.
It takes me a while to adjust to redesigns on platforms that I use regularly, even though I don't use Facebook that regularly, but everything seems a lot bigger now.
Yeah.
Oh, I lost you all for a second. Okay, we're still live on YouTube. We're good. I was trying to do too much at once on my computer. Let me do the phone instead. Just want to make sure we hit the Facebook folks. I know a lot of folks are on Facebook. It looks like we're 2 minutes out from starting, which is good. And for our attendees who are here already, feel free to introduce yourself in the chat. We like to have an active chat for these things. We'd love to hear from you. If you want to, put where you're calling in from, if you put your zip code, that's super helpful for us because it helps us keep track of, who we're reaching and our impact. If you want to put something you're interested in learning about, we can make sure to answer that during the Q&A portion. So please, feel free to come on and say hi. And we got Robin from Washington State. Hey, Robin, thanks for being here. And if you select all panelists and attendees when you answer in the chat, that helps everyone, see maybe some of the other attendees can help answer your questions, or you can get a conversation going. It's just a fun way to be friendly. And we'll get started in just a minute. I was in an event earlier today, and the music they were playing as people came into the Zoom was the Jurassic Park soundtrack. I thought that was pretty fun. It really set the vibe. Also, I love the Howe Library's logo. It has such a peaceful, calming blue.
That's nice of you to say.
It's really nice. I haven't ever seen a library logo like that. Every time I tag you guys on social media, I'm like, oh, that's so nice. All right, looks like everybody's here. Well, we have 2 more attendees will come in, but we might as well get started because we have a packed program today. So I'm going to share my screen and get our presentation going. So everyone, welcome. You are here for Citizen Science Meets Summer Reading. And it's presented by SciStarter and the All of Us Research Program, the network of the National Library of Medicine. And we're here because citizen science is scientific research that anyone can do. It's a way that anyone can be part of learning more about our world. And we thought it was a natural fit with the Imagine Your Story theme. We thought, why not tell the story of citizen science? And that's what we do at SciStarter. We help connect people to science we can do together. So for our attendees, as you come on in, just keep in mind that we are streaming live to YouTube. So anything you say in the chat, we may read out loud and it could be part of the recording. But we urge you to please be active in the chat. If you have any questions, let us know. If you want to tell us who you are, where you're calling in from, if you could put your zip code in there, that's super helpful for us. And just so we can learn a little bit more about you. So today we're learning about the IC Change Project. We're going to investigate weather and climate, and we're going to hear from Samantha Harrington from the IC Change Project. And we were graciously hosted by the Howe Library in New Hampshire. So it's going to be a great dialogue between a ongoing project, IC Change, global project, and Howe Library, which is based in New Hampshire. And you'll hear from them today. But we're going to get things started with a poll. We just want to hear a little bit more about you. So please let us know, have you ever participated in a citizen science project before? Any answer is good. Oh my gosh, we have 2 yeses already. So just let us know, yes, no, maybe, unsure, any answer is fine. Looks like we have a few yeses, some nos, and some unshures. Awesome, we're going to end the poll there. Let's share those results. So if you have participated in one, let us know in the chat which one. That's super interesting for us. And if you haven't, you're in the right place. You're going to learn how to participate in IC Change today. So next up, we want to just know a little bit more about you. So who are you? Are you an aspiring citizen scientist? Are you a parent of an aspiring citizen scientist? Are you a student? Are you a teacher, an educator, a troop leader, etc.? Are you a librarian or part of a library staff? Are you a researcher or a project leader? Are you just a bored person on the internet? Or are you none of these? Any answer is fine. Select all that apply. If these options don't really resonate with you, that's totally fine. You can click none of these. And we hope by the end of this that you are all citizen scientists. So please go ahead and vote. We'll give you a few more seconds to get your votes in. So 3, 2, 1, and we're going to end the poll. And let's share results. All right, looks like the majority of you are aspiring citizen scientists. We have a few students, a few educators. We have some librarians in the house, some people who don't identify with any of these, totally fine. And as we said, by the end, you should hopefully know how to do citizen science. So we'll stop sharing the results there. So to kick us off, we're going to pass the mic to Megan from Howe Library to talk about what's going on at the library. Megan, take it away.
Hi, I'm Megan Coleman. I'm the Programs and PR Librarian at the Howe Library. We are located in Hanover, New Hampshire, home to Dartmouth College, but we are a public library, one of the public libraries in town. And we are currently offering takeout service. It's kind of our version of curbside. And we are offering soon our Expand Your World and our art print collections. There are non-traditional library items. Part of the Expand Your World collection is that we have a telescope you can borrow, so you can see the night sky. And we also have a birding kit, so you can identify the birds that are hanging out in your backyard or on your hike. We also have a museum pass program that allows you to visit a museum for free or at reduced admission, depends on the museum. And some of the museums that are kind of science related are the Fairbanks Museum and Planetarium in St. Johnsbury, Vermont. We just added the Seacoast Science Center, which is in located near Portsmouth, New Hampshire, on the seacoast. Our 13 miles of seacoast we have in New Hampshire. And then we also have VINS, which is the Raptor Center in Quechee, Vermont. And we're going to be adding some outdoor programming this fall. So if you follow us on social media or visit our event page on our website, you can find out more about that.
Great. Thank you, Megan. So citizen science. So I know many of you who are here are patrons of the Howe Library, and you can do citizen science in Hanover. And some of you aren't patrons, aren't from New Hampshire, and that's totally fine too. You can do citizen science anywhere in the world. So you might be wondering, what is citizen science? Well, at SciStarter, we define it pretty broadly. We think of citizen science as a collaboration between scientists and those of us who are curious, concerned, and motivated to make a difference. So in other words, citizen science is any way you can volunteer your time to turn your curiosity into impact and help us understand more about the world. So you can do citizen science by documenting light pollution and helping astronomers understand the night sky and where we might need some interventions to reduce light pollution. Or you can do citizen science by testing water quality and helping us understand where drinking water is healthy or safe. You could do citizen science by taking pictures of plants and animals around you and submitting those to help understand global biodiversity, so where different plants and animals appear. Citizen science is super broad. It's everything from astronomy to zoology and everything in between. Citizen science is as diverse as science itself. It's bugs, it's health, it's everything. And the great news is you can be involved with it no matter what age you are or where you are. We urge you to make a SciStarter account. It can be kind of your passport to all these different citizen science projects. It helps you discover new opportunities to participate. So if you go to scistarter.org/NLM, on that page, you'll be able to make your SciStarter account and discover a few projects that we've picked out, especially for libraries and patrons of libraries, to get involved in projects that help document environmental and human health. On SciStarter, there are thousands of different citizen science projects listed. Folks will add their projects to SciStarter when they're seeking volunteers and ways for volunteers to discover them. And on this page, we know it can be a little overwhelming to see all those thousands of projects, events, and tools, to participate in science. On this page, you can get started with just a few projects, and hopefully it can make the process something that is fun for you, and you might learn something along the way. So please, at this point in the program, we always encourage you to go to scistarter.org/NLM. So make sure you put that in your browser and get started by making your SciStarter account. Also on this page, you'll find an Introduction to Citizen Science tutorial. We're super excited about this tutorial because it's now offered in English and Spanish, and it's really accessible to people of different ages. So you could share it with a student, you could share it with a friend of your family or your mom or whoever in your life who you want to know about citizen science. It gives people the what, the how, the who, and the why of citizen science. So by clicking through this tutorial, engaging with it, doing the interactive quizzes, watching the videos, it takes about 30 minutes. And by the end of it, you'll have a really good grasp of the field of citizen science. And you'll also get a certificate. So I think it's a really cool tutorial. I hope you enjoy it. And I hope that you explore that scistarter.org/NLM page, especially because the IC Change project is listed on that page. We have a video explaining, how to participate. We linked to some of the past webinars we've done. The IC Change project has been so awesome about joining events like these and sharing their expertise. And you'll be able to click through to the project website from the NLM page and get started and make sure you're post-track in your SciStarter dashboard. So we really urge you to go to that scistarter.org/NLM page because you can discover amazing projects like IC Change. But I'll let them tell you about it. Now we're going to introduce Samantha Harrington from the IC Change project, and she's going to talk about the power of stories. Sam, take it away.
Hi, everybody. I am Sam. I am the IC Change Global Community Manager, and I'm also a climate change reporter. My story is in climate change is sort of like unpredictable. I didn't intend to end up working in climate change, but I also sort of joke that I'd been preparing for it my whole life. I grew up in southern Wisconsin where we talk about the weather all the time. Megan and I were just talking before this call about how people in New England also love to talk about the weather. So maybe it's an everywhere thing. But I also was starting to see change happen to places that I loved and cared about a lot. I'm always trying to visit the North Woods of Wisconsin every summer. And there's sort of a transition forest between northern boreal forests and southern forests, and so I was watching, the forest composition change and new pests come in. And I had a mentor who was a climate reporter. And so I started working with her. And then that led me to IC Change. And I think it was the spring of 2017, I started working with IC Change to report stories that the community was seeing. And since then have gotten more involved in managing the community and sort of letting people know what is going on in IC Change and how they can participate and get involved in and make change in their own communities as well. So that's me. IC Change as an organization is a global community of people from all around the world, everyday people who are documenting the real life effects of climate change. And those documentation moments are contributing to local solutions, as well as general education and risk awareness for people across the world. It is super easy to sign up and start posting. We have a website. It's ichange.org, or there's a mobile app for iPhone and Android. So all you've got to do is, can you take me to the how to participate slide? Perfect, thank you. So on the website or on the app, you just create an account. And when you're doing this, make sure that you sign up with the same email that you use for SciStarter. So your contributions are tracked by SciStarter. And then you post what you see. And it's really anything about how you are experiencing the weather or what you are seeing change in your environment. So maybe, we're looking at the end of summer right now, maybe normally, but maybe that end of summer is coming later and later this year, and that's something that you are observing. Or, maybe I know a lot of people in New England don't necessarily have air conditioning, so maybe the heat has been really unbearable and it's been hard to sleep. So those are all things that people post on IC Change. And we're really excited and interested in that space where like your daily life interacts with the climate or the weather or your environment. And then when you post that, it'll show up in the sightings feed, which is, you can filter it or you can leave it unfiltered and see every sighting that anyone has posted in chronological order. But you also can filter by geography if you're really curious about what people in your town are seeing or your state, as well as filtering by like dates and topic. So if you just want to see posts about extreme heat, just post about flooding. That's pretty easy to do. And then your posts have a lot of power to create a record of what climate change looks like on the ground level. So a lot of times when we're talking about climate change, particularly in science, but also as it is presented to the community, we're talking in terms of like models and studies, but the like variable experiences on the ground are quite dramatically different from place to place and even like individual to individual within the same places. And so creating your like own personal record and being able to compare and contrast to what other people are experiencing is really valuable. Can you give me the next slide when you have a chance? Thanks. So other than that sort of like individual record, there are a couple of other different ways that people use IC Change. One way is that whole communities or groups of neighbors will come and say like, hey, we're dealing with this climate hazard and we want to collect data to present to our local decision makers to try and advocate for change. This is something that community members from Ocean City, New Jersey, who are dealing with quite a bit of flooding, both from like high tides as well as from storms, and when you have high tides and storms at the same time. So they've been documenting every flooding event, how long the flooding lasts, where they're seeing it, and this has really given them a record. And as their town has done some like flood remediation work, they're able to go back and say, okay, the flooding on this street is a lot less since these pumps were put in during this kind of storm, but during a storm at a high tide, it still is, we're seeing about the same amount of flooding. And other observations like that really, they help them be informed community members and understand like what to advocate for and ask for to improve their quality of life. In other communities, New Orleans is the biggest and like longest running example of this. IC Change works in partnership with municipalities and local organizations to help them get data from residents to help inform and design projects that the city is trying to do, or that organizations are trying to do. So for example, there is a resilience project happening in a neighborhood of New Orleans called Gentilly that is aimed at mitigating flooding. And so IC changers in that neighborhood have their posts contribute to those designs, and engineers have sort of adapted where infrastructure is going based on what IC changers are seeing. And then at the global level, we sometimes work with researchers to sort of take a look at what the community is experiencing as a whole. And so we recently worked with a social scientist to understand how documenting your experiences on IC change sort of raises your knowledge and your comfortability talking about climate change and all of the like hard conversations that come along with it. And that we think has the power to make communities and individuals like more aware of their risks and more prepared to handle them. So that is the general overview of IC change. And you really like, there's a lot of space in IC change to make it your own and use it in a way that is going to like help you cope with the changes that you're seeing.
Thank you, Sam. Yeah, I think IC change, I think I've heard you all say this, you're the expert in your own backyard. So yeah, I think we'll hand it over to Megan now to ask Sam a few questions based on what we just learned. So Megan, do you have some questions for us?
Sorry, I unmuted myself because my toddler was trying to make herself known.
Oh.
Just cute, but you didn't want to hear that. You didn't want to understand. If you have any questions though, feel free to put them in the chat because we don't have to hear me ask all the questions. I'm sure you have questions too. So Sam, I was wondering, how do you decide, like, I'm sure there's so many stories when you look throughout all the sightings and stuff. How do you decide what stories to tell? Like to focus on, I guess, more?
Yeah, that's a great question. And there's so many that like we wish we could tell. We're always trying to like get local reporters and saying, hey, this person's seeing this, like you should dig into this as well. But I think like personally, what I look into as the person who like right now is really just the only one doing reporting on what IC changers are seeing, I look for trends that we're seeing across different geographies. So if a lot of people are experiencing heat waves, looking into what can be like learned and shared community to community, and then also looking for things that people call out as like very unusual are things to see. So for example, right now, sneak peek, we're working on a story with an IC changer who lives in Wyoming, who was talking about how she like had never experienced drought like she had this year, and how different the winter was and how like limited the snowfall was. And so that drought like continued into the summer. So people who are posting things that are like surprising, unusual, or that are posting something that a lot of other people are seeing, those are the two primary things that sort of like set off alarms of like, oh, we need to dig into this.
Let's see, you covered, I'm just going over questions you asked, so covered a lot of what I had. So another thing I thought of too was how science and weather can sometimes seem intimidating to people because they don't know the jargon or they feel like they don't know a lot. So how do you take a topic like that and make it accessible and interesting to people without it feeling like you dumbed it down, so to speak?
Yeah, for sure. I think this gets into sort of what Caroline was saying. We say a lot that like you're the expert in your backyard. You know when things are weird, when things are unusual, or if you don't know, you know when to ask the question, like, is this strange? I don't necessarily remember this happening in the past. And you're right, these topics are so big and broad and overwhelming that we think that really like localizing it and reminding people that like, no, like, you know what you're talking about, you know what you're seeing, and what you're seeing is important. It's important to this community, but it's also important to this like larger conversation about climate change. Because I do think that like the way that we solve problems or that we adapt to changing conditions is the only really solution is to like do it together, to share what has worked in different places, and to sort of get everybody on board and like moving towards the same goal. So definitely, if you're overwhelmed, you're not alone. And this can be like a good place to sort of dip your toe into understanding climate change and how it relates to your personal life, and also sort of like connecting with other community members who have similar concerns and cares, and you can have conversations with them.
What's something about icy change that has surprised you since you started working there?
Yeah, I think that I always think of like example posts that are like most surprising to me, but there's probably like bigger trends in the community too. But I think I always love the international posts because I learned so much from them, in terms of like maybe the weather is like super different. Someone posted once from Nigeria about how they like bit into a watermelon and the watermelon was really hot because it had been so hot, and so like wasn't this like refreshing break. And that was like a moment for me. I was like, oh, like that's such an interesting way to like describe and observe and acknowledge heat, that I never would have thought about before. But it is also something that like I would also hate warm watermelon. We can relate on that way. Or like last weekend, someone actually just posted about like these really devastating floods in Cameroon, which I didn't know were happening. And so whenever the community points out something that like me, who is usually pretty tuned into weather events that are happening, and I hadn't heard about it, that's always a like really exciting moment for me. And I do think that like, I guess just generally across the community, something that has been surprising is how like thoughtful everyone is and how there's room for so many different perspectives, from like young school kids to, you know, retired gardeners. And there is so much like knowledge sharing and information sharing and space for even like when things are scary and tense, people like looking at things very like rationally and processing them together, is sometimes, it's surprising, but it's like surprising in a great way.
I have a quick question. Oh, sorry. I'll let you go.
I was going to
Megan.
ask, it was really quick. How many of the users roughly are like overseas, and how many of them are within the US?
Ooh, that's a great question. I should know. The vast majority are in the US.
Okay.
And there are usually only a handful of people posting from international locations, but there are like a couple that like regularly post from international places. So we have a man who posts monthly from Kenya. So that's always fun. But definitely it's overwhelmingly people in the US at this point.
Yeah, Megan, that was a really good question. And kind of related to that is I was thinking about all the global disasters folks are experiencing, especially in, you know, the US with like the hurricanes in the Gulf right now. I was wondering for Sam, how do you all urge people to stay safe during these things? Because I know there can be a temptation to like, you know, stay at your home during a disaster, or maybe like want to contribute to projects and like document the disaster. But what kind of messaging do you all put out about that sort of thing?
That's a really good point. Yeah, we definitely don't encourage people to like put themselves in harm's way to document. We usually will like encourage people, like if you're evacuating because of a storm or a fire, it's like valuable to post like, hey, I had to evacuate. And then maybe when you get back to your home, taking stock of what has changed, and you can post about that. But yeah, definitely when there is some sort of impending disaster coming to a place where we know that there are icy changers, we'll try and send out an email just with like information reminders to check the National Weather Service or whoever is providing emergency assistance and alerts. And yeah, a call for like prioritize your safety. If you see strange things, you can post them on icy change. You can always post after the fact. Yeah, so I think that sort of answers your question, but definitely like if you're in a situation where you're like, do I need to evacuate or do I need to post on icy change? Like definitely evacuate, please.
Megan, do we have any questions in the chat?
There's one from Pammy. I hope I said your name correctly. She says, does SciStarter have a way for someone who is trying to set up a citizen science project, get a program off the ground? Maybe a step-by-step guide for protocols, data collection, making an app?
Yeah, I mean, every project is different, and that's the amazing thing. So like, You have projects like IC Change, which are like people like Sam run, amazing folks who combine storytelling with, you know, climate and weather and the science aspects. There are projects out there like the Globe at Night project, which is based out of an observatory in Arizona. And that's a global campaign to measure light pollution with astronomers and citizen scientists from all over the world. And then there are projects that, you know, are very much like community led. Like one project I'm thinking about is Earth Echo, which is a water monitoring project that has a big focus on youth. So young people from around the world sign up to be leaders of Earth Echo, and they, you know, they might be like 13 years old and they're getting their whole community to monitor water and doing kind of advanced chemistry. So in short, if you explore the SciStarter website, we have a section for researchers with different citizen science best practices and tips. Like I know we linked to the National Academies report there. The National Academies of the US released a report 2 years ago. Darlene, the founder of SciStarter, was a co-author about how to integrate learning outcomes into citizen science projects. So how to make sure your citizen science project isn't just scientifically accurate, but also participants get something out of it for their own education. So yeah, if you go to SciStarter, you'll see like different tips and best practices, but no, I would caution you against like, there are no two projects are alike. I mean, the most important thing is to have clear protocols so people know how to submit something, and they know what the project's looking for. So for example, on IC Change, they tell you, like when you log onto the site, it's pretty clear how to submit your data, how to make an observation, giving that qualitative data about how weather and climate affect you and your community. They make it pretty clear what they're looking for. Other projects like Stall Catchers, which is an Alzheimer's research project, they make it pretty clear how to analyze a blood vessel. So yeah, I think if you, and there are also like, for example, let's say you want to start studying the water quality of your community. I keep on mentioning water quality, but like, let's say you're doing a survey of all the beetles in your community. You could set up a project on like iNaturalist, or there are websites like Anecdata and citsci.org, where you could set up an investigation, then you could list that on SciStarter. So basically the world is yours. Excited to have you explore it. And at SciStarter, you can always email us and we're happy to help. And that actually kind of leads me to a related question for Sam. When people are submitting their data on IC Change, are submitting their observations, what are some best practices or tips folks should follow?
That's a great question, and something that we have been talking about a lot as we're trying to make sure that IC Change is something that is useful for teachers who are trying to teach virtually, and they like need new activities. So we've been thinking through a lot of like what makes a valuable post, and I think that we've landed on a couple of different things. The qualitative data that you're talking about, the like story, the experience, any details that you can add to that, really make a great post. Anytime you can post something that surprises you or is unusual, that's really valuable. And then anytime you can post something that either like helps inform your community or creates conversation within your community, like locally or globally, that's really great as well. You know, maybe it's something that doesn't seem that weird or unusual or surprising, but it starts a conversation with people that leads to more information and more education and awareness around whatever topic you've posted about. So yeah, there's a lot of different ways to post a great post, but certainly like the more story details you can add, the stronger and the like more exciting I find when I'm reading through the feed.
That's a really good point. And that makes me think for Megan. Megan, I have a question for you now. So you've heard about
Sure.
what IC Change is looking for, the stories that can be told on the platform. You know your community really well. You know Hanover, New Hampshire. What are some stories that you could see your community potentially telling on IC Change?
Ooh, well, I know we have a really active, we have a lot of people who are really interested in environmentalism, climate change, and we have a sustainability committee in town, and then we have a garden club. And one of the, I don't know if it's I want to say it's probably the sustainability committee, but they're really concerned about invasive species, and climate change has, obviously allowed some of those to really flourish, and encouraging native plants. So I could see that be something people could potentially be reporting as well. We're also a really outdoorsy community too. We, the Hanover Conservancy has preserved a lot of and maintains a lot of hiking trails and land in town. So I'm sure if people are going on a hike and they see something kind of interesting or different, that's, you know, assuming you have good cell phone coverage, but you could always, could you take a picture of something and then post it later if you don't have good coverage?
Yeah, definitely.
Okay. Just thinking, we're in one of those like rural parts of northern New England. There's, you can like literally move half an inch and you suddenly don't have cell service anymore, right? Depending on who your carrier is and which way the wind's blowing or whatnot.
Yeah, always can post when you get back to Wi-Fi. No big deal.
I can imagine another local story or something that people talk about is what seems to be less and less snow every winter, which is a really big deal around here. We complain about the weather because it's so bad, but these days it seems to be more freezing rain, mud, and ice than the feet and feet of snow that everyone remembers. So I can imagine a lot of people recording snowfall and being concerned about that aspect of the story.
Yeah, Jared and I were just talking about how I heard on Vermont Public Radio the other day, they think the new quarantine trend craze up our way is going to be cross-country skiing, because there's not a lot of, there's a easy learning curve and it's kind of socially distanced in nature anyway, but I've bought snowshoes. I have snowshoes. I love snowshoeing, but some winters it's really hard to do because you don't have enough ground. And so I wonder, we're going to have one of those winters that will let you, or be cold enough that places can make snow, which I guess is a whole other environmental issue you can get into too, right? With water consumption and whatnot. But just, are we going to be able to do that this winter?
I would say the last 2 winters, there's not been enough snow to snowshoe consistently, which is shocking in Vermont, which is where I live.
Definitely. Yeah, that would be a great icy change post. I'm like thinking I need to get snowshoes for Wisconsin winter so I can like keep seeing my friends from like 10 feet apart. But you're right, like if it doesn't snow, how does that change things? But yeah, I think also interesting stories about, I don't know, I guess maybe it's Vermont. I was going to say I'm always interested to hear how like the big warm-ups and fluctuations in like February temperatures are affecting maple syrup production. So
it feels like,
yeah, totally. We have that in Wisconsin too. But yeah, so there's like, that's really cool. There's a lot of different opportunities there, but definitely invasive species is really interesting. I think Robin also mentioned in the chat that they see some in Washington.
I see a lot of action in the Q&A. Megan, are people asking questions there?
They are, though we answered Pammy's question. Yeah, I think we're caught up on the Q&A on the Zoom side at least.
Awesome. I think we have time for about 3 more questions before we need to move to our next portion.
Okay. Let's see. So what if somebody was thinking about participating in icy change but might be kind of hesitant? What would you tell them, Sam, to convince them to create an account and get sharing?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think something that I hear a lot, like working with icy change and trying to recruit new community members, but also just like as somebody who tries to tell stories and encourage people that their stories are like something that is worth sharing. I think that we, like as people, inherently sort of like normalize what we're experiencing and say like, oh, that's not a big deal, that's not really worth sharing, but it usually is. And so I would encourage people not to like try and break down that wall of like feeling hesitant or feeling like your experience isn't like as extreme as somebody who, you know, is dealing with hurricanes and wildfires all the time. Like your experience with climate change is still something that's really important and really important to share. And I also would just say that the community on icy change is really like all over the map in terms of like literally geography, but also in terms of, you know, experience with science and with the environment. And so there's so much space to just like provide your unique perspective without like any like judgment or anything like that. I think the community is like pretty welcoming, and there's like so much knowledge sharing that happens that if you're feeling hesitant, it's like worth it to push through to get to that point because I think the things that you are seeing are really important and are really like unique, and you're really the only one that can share the ways that climate change is affecting your life.
What would you say is one of the success story? I can't say that word today. Success story of IC change. I don't know, too many S's.
Definitely. Yeah, I think, there's so many different ways to measure success. I think that like on the individual level, one that is really exciting for me is we had a IC changer who started out using IC change, I think in her 3rd or 4th grade class, and like has continued to use it for years. And she posts things that are like very unique and unexpected. Like, for example, she posted about how extreme heat was affecting her ability to focus by monitoring the amount of time it took her to get through a piano lesson practice, and like posted the time it took during a hot day versus the time it took during a cool day, which was just like a really great way to visualize that, like the effects of that experience in a way that nobody else had posted. And so I think like watching her growth has been something that's been really exciting, and I would say success. There's also, we've been working a lot, Caroline mentioned this earlier, I think, with some of the Museum of Science folks, both in Boston and in North Carolina, and seeing them be such like great conversation leaders. So they like use IC change themselves and also are encouraging community members to use it to study specific topics, and sort of like the way that they have been able to create conversation is really inspiring. And then I think the like last big success, I would say, we just actually, one of the projects that we were working on with engineers in New Orleans just got to the like 90% design stage. And I think they're planning on starting construction like in the winter. They just had their big like design meeting, and we got to share with community members like how their posts informed the designs and the decisions that were made. And so that's something that has been like really exciting for us. It's like feeling like we were able to help like neighborhood residents make sure that their voices and their experiences weren't forgotten through that process. So I think there's like lots of different levels to success, and watching how everybody sort of grows is one of my favorite parts.
And have researchers used any of the data from the project?
Definitely.
And like for researching that, or studies or implementing change on like a higher government level? Or
yeah, the community that we worked with in Ocean City was also working with a researcher at I believe it's the Urban Coast Institute at Monmouth. He works at Monmouth University. And so he was able to like look at what people were posting and analyze that data, and present back to the community like what types of storm events they can expect to cause flooding. So that was, I don't know that and I think that they were communicating that research with their decision makers, but I don't know that it has like actually led to any changes at this point. But definitely we've worked with him, and then we've worked with social scientists to sort of study like learning and language change over time as people post on IC change. And so seeing that sort of like growth in risk awareness. Those are our two big ones right now, but we also have worked quite a bit with researchers who use heat sensors to understand urban heat, both in New York City and in Boston and in New Orleans as well.
Awesome. Thank you, Megan, for those thoughtful questions. And thank you, Sam, for educating us today. We really appreciate it. Great. So next up, we have our friends from the All of Us research program who are going to talk to us a little bit about precision medicine and how to have health research that includes all of us. So Tess, take it away.
Hi, thanks, Caroline. Today's webinar is brought to you in part by the Network of the National Library of Medicine, NNLM, which is a program of the National Library of Medicine, NLM. And my name is Tess Wilson. I'm the Community Engagement Coordinator for the Middle Atlantic region of the network, and I am excited to tell you a bit more about the All of Us Research Program, which is another partner in today's webinar. So the mission of the All of Us Research Program is to accelerate health research and medical breakthroughs. And this will eventually enable individualized prevention, treatment, and care for everyone. And the goal of the program is to help researchers understand more about why some people get sick and why others might stay healthy. And by looking for these patterns, researchers can learn more about what affects people's health. So the program aims to build one of the largest, most diverse data sets of its kind for health research, with 1 million or more volunteers nationwide who will sign up to share their information over time. So it's a really exciting, huge endeavor. It's a really exciting project. The All of Us and National Library of Medicine partnership aims to increase the capacity of public library and community-based organizations to improve health literacy, digital literacy, and the participation in scientific research, which is why we're so excited to participate in citizen science events like this one. Next slide, please. All of Us is a precision medicine study, like Caroline said, but what does that mean? Precision medicine is a new way of looking at health treatment and prevention as being designed for individuals. So this way, doctors can take into account a person's lifestyle, environment, and biological makeup to figure out the best treatment for that individual. Next slide, please. You might be new to the term precision medicine, but it's something we use already. One great example of precision medicine is eyeglass prescriptions. So when we visit our regular doctor, they might prescribe a treatment or prevention that works well for most people. But eye doctors can tell us exactly which lenses will work best for our individual eyes. And when a lot of people pitch in to help with this kind of research program, we can build a large national database that will eventually help eliminate one-size-fits-all medicine. Next slide, please. As I mentioned, citizen science and crowdsourcing is a focus area for NNLM, NLM, and for the All of Us research program. Through citizen science and crowdsourcing, NNLM hopes to engage communities in addressing needs and accelerating research. As part of our partnership with SciStarter, we curated a list of citizen science projects that align with the All of Us engagement priority areas, and they're all focused on health research. And you can find those, Caroline already mentioned, but you can find those at scistarter.org/NLM. It's a really good list of some cool health-related citizen science projects. NNLM is committed to increasing access to citizen science resources to diverse populations with the help of libraries and community organizations. And so we hope you'll stay actively involved and be a part of future events as we continue to work with SciStarter to create an amazing program for, yes, we're already thinking about Citizen Science Month 2021. Next slide, please. And one of the great parts about this research is that just about everyone in the US can participate as long as you're over 18. And you can get started by visiting joinallofus.org/NLM. And if you join, you can start completing surveys and start submitting some of your health information. And then eventually when we can meet in person again, an All of Us researcher can help collect your blood and urine samples, complete the physical measurements, which will make you a full participant in this national research program. And the last one for me, please. So, thanks for joining us today, and be sure to check out joinallofus.org/NLM for more information about this really exciting research project. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you, Tess. We've had a lot of events with kids recently, and just in case there are any students in the audience, even though you have to be over the age of 18 to participate, I've been comparing All of Us to being like voting. Even though you have to be 18 to vote, it's still important to know about even while you're a student. So yeah, I just hope everyone who learned about this is heartened by the fact that there's a national research study with All of Us to help make medicine more inclusive. So to kind of wrap us up, we're at the close now. We're going to pass the mic back to Megan to talk about how people can stay involved with their local library.
So I post a lot on social media and maintain our event page on our website. If you're curious what's going on at the Howe Library, we're Howe Library on Instagram and Twitter. Facebook won't let us verify us, but if you book Howe Library Hanover, New Hampshire, I'm sure we'll come right up. As I mentioned earlier, we're going to be doing some outdoor programming, so keep an eye out for that. In terms of upcoming programming, Jared and I are in talks with someone to bring a permaculture gardening and food justice program coming this winter. So like January, February, I think is what we were thinking. Yeah, Jared's nodding. Yes, he's confirming that for me. Yes. So and we know you at the Howe Library, you all love your wildlife and nature environmental programs. So we'll keep doing those as well. And
Awesome.
someday we'll be able to be open for more than just curbside, but we're not sure when that is yet. So stay tuned.
Oh my gosh, yeah, that's so awesome. And I'll keep my eyes peeled on IC Change to see if there are any Howe Library patrons posting on there. So thank you so much, Megan and Jared, for the work you both do.
Thank you.
Yeah, and then to just so everyone knows, if you're in the Howe Library system, so if you're in Hanover, you can actually check out the Field Guide to Citizen Science, which is SciStarter's book. It was co-authored by our founder, and we actually give IC Change a shout out in the book. So please check out this book if you're interested in learning more about the whole field of citizen science and joining the Citizen Science Brigade to start making a difference. And if you're not in the system, I'm sure your library has the Field Guide to Citizen Science. Many do, especially through e-media services. So please try to access the book through those. We think you'll really enjoy it if you like this sort of event. To kind of wrap us up, we hope that you all go to scistarter.org/NLM to make your SciStarter account, to go through the Intro to Citizen Science tutorial, and to find instructions for the IC Change project. So head over to this page, scistarter.org/NLM, to get started. And we also have some more summer reading events this week. We're just at the tail end. Summer is almost over. So if you're interested, tomorrow we're learning about tap water with a library in California and how we can help create an inventory of tap water pipes. And then on Friday, we have an event with the Flu Near You and COVID Near You projects about how to track outbreaks and help make us all safer and make better epidemiological models. And then next week, we have an event on plastic pollution. So we're so grateful to our public library partners, to the network of the National Library of Medicine, the All of Us Research Program, and all those projects for making these events happen. And they're online, so the good news is, even if it's not your local library, you could RSVP and potentially learn something. So in conclusion, thank you. We hope that from this event you learned that you can get involved and you can make a difference. You can turn your curiosity into impact, and your story matters. You can tell your story with IC Change. We hope you go to scistarter.org/NLM to participate. And we really hope that you take our survey. I hope one of my colleagues can drop that in the chat for us, but it's tinyurl.com summer reading 10 participants. By taking this survey, you help us understand how well we did and help us make these events better for the next time. And in closing, one thing I was thinking about, I wanted to ask Sam one last question. Sam, I know it can be, especially, telling the stories of climate change and in your role as a climate reporter, it can be a little depressing. And these events have like a lot of trauma for people, especially like when they see big changes in their homes. So I was just wondering how you may cope with that and how you may advise the IC Change community to cope with those kind of unsettling changes.
Ooh, great question. Definitely, it can be a lot to consume this information like on a regular basis. I think like anything that sort of messes with your ability to imagine the future can be hard. And I think the way that I personally manage that is by sort of like surrounding myself with people who have similar concerns and know that I can like talk to them and be like, I'm really scared about this hurricane season or the way that, whatever news event may be happening. It's like, this has been a lot to handle. And so I find talking to other people is really useful. I think talking to other IC changers is something that is helpful for me. When I am doing stories, I'm always making sure that there's a component that is sort of like solutions oriented, whether it's oriented to, mitigation, trying to, stop or slow down emissions, or adaptation. I think people are so impressively creative in the ways that they adapt to really difficult conditions. And so I find like a lot of inspiration and knowledge in people who have like survived and thrived through natural disasters in the past. And there are also, I mean, so many like potential services. There are, I think it's like, I don't know, I like want to say it's a growing field, but I don't know if field is the right word, but there are quite a few platforms. I know that there is one called Eco Anxious Stories, or I think the Good Grief Network, are places where people are talking about sort of like environmental anxieties and climate related mental health trauma. And yeah, and then I think, I mean, obviously I always recommend people talk to their doctor if they are like finding it's sort of just so overwhelming to the point where they're like, daily life is becoming more difficult. So yeah, I think it's definitely something that I like talk about as much as possible, because I think that like we don't really have the time or space for it to be so taboo anymore. And I think that, you know, you'd be surprised by how many people are really like afraid, and how sort of healing it can be to just acknowledge that on its own, and then sort of say, okay, like this is where I'm at, this is how I'm feeling, and then how do I try and make tomorrow a little bit better? Or how do I try and envision a future that is something that is like still exciting and livable to me? So yeah, it's a hard topic, and it can be a hard thing to deal with, the trauma, and especially like if you've gone through like an acute natural disaster. Definitely, like if you have access to professionals who can help you through that, highly recommend. But it's sort of like gnawing anxiety, I find it just talking to people about is really the best way.
That's really good advice. Yeah, and we actually finished a little early, so I want to ask Megan and Jared again if you all have any last minute questions for Sam before we head out of the Zoom room.
I was curious how the data is handled when people submit their observations. Does it is it sort of crunched en masse? Is all of it read by individuals? Do you extract certain stories to make use of? What happens on your end when people submit this?
Yeah, right now it's pretty like manual. I'll read through them all and try and like respond and comment on them. For ones that are in specific project areas, so New Orleans, and then we also are currently working with the city of Miami on flooding work. In the past, we have done work with the Museum of Science in Boston. And so compiling reports of like, this is what IC Changers saw during this storm event, and making sure that those like engineering partners or city partners are seeing that. But yeah, it is all sort of manual at this point. And for the most part, people can see the same data that we see. And in those local projects, we also have maps. So you can view like New Orleans storms and flooding has a map, Boston extreme heat has a map. And we're talking about making those more global, but always trying to do it with like keeping people's privacy in mind, because sometimes these things that you're posting about have the like power to influence home values, or just like people like, I personally don't like my personal information on the internet. And so we're always like obscuring data a little bit on public facing maps or in the feed, so nobody can like tell exactly where you're posting from. But so that it's like enough geographical context to sort of like be able to put that onto the story. But I don't know if that answers your question fully, but that's sort of how the data is handled at this point. And it's an ongoing process of like, how can we like make an output of this data more valuable to community members all the time? So obviously, like if you start using IC Change and you're like, I would like love to have it reported to me like this, that would be always a welcome feedback for us.
Awesome. Thank you for that question, Jared. Unless any of our other panelists have any last words, I think we'll wrap it up here. I just want to thank everyone one last time for being part of this, for caring about these issues, and for wanting to make a difference. And I hope to see you all on IC Change and to see your posts, because we're all in this together, so we can all share it together. So thank you so much, Sam. Thank you, Megan. Thank you, Jared. Thank you to Tess from NNLM. And see you all online on Zoom sometime soon.
Thanks, guys. Hope you get some snow this winter.
Ooh. All right. Night, everybody.
Bye.
Good night. Thank you.
Bye.